Hi everyone, this is Shain from LTC Consulting. We're trying something new here today where we're going to try to educate everyone on a video training. So please let us know your feedback if you feel this was helpful. Today's training is in regard to a new New Jersey Medicaid regulation going into place December 1st for qualified income trusts. We're going to discuss the provisions and regulations of this qualified income trust, otherwise known as QITs. And after that, LTC clients will be receiving some additional enclosures and paperwork, which we will discuss after the training. So let's jump right into it. A qualified income trust is something that is already existing in other states, and New Jersey is beginning to use it for Medicaid recipients, as I said, December 1st, 2014. In the past, residents in a skilled nursing facility usually fell under one of two categories. Category number one was called Med Only, for residents whose income is below $2,163. For those residents who have that income or lower, they fell under a resource limit of $2,000 or less is what they were allowed to have. So if their income was below $2,163, their assets or resources were $2,000 or below in order to qualify for Medicaid coverage. Where residents who had income above $2,163 were allowed to have up to $4,000 in assets. So those were the two categories. It was Med Only and Med Needy. In order for more people who are applying for Medicaid coverage in the community to become eligible for Medicaid coverage, the state is doing away with the Med Needy category for residents in a skilled nursing facility. They're doing away with it, and everybody is going to fall under one flat category, which is going to be that their income must be below $2,163 and their assets must be $2,000 or lower. So in a way, it simplifies things that everybody is falling under the same category in a skilled nursing facility. $2,163 or less in the income and $2,000 or less in the resources. For resources, obviously, if somebody has too much, they can spend it down in order to meet that criteria. The question is what to do about the residents who have a higher income than $2,163. How will they be eligible for New Jersey Medicaid? This is where the Qualified Income Trust comes into play. A Qualified Income Trust, to explain what it is basically a trust that is set up for excess income that residents who have income above that $2,163 mark can use in order to shelter that additional excess income. So let's use an example. Let's say a resident has two sources of income that they have on a monthly basis received: a Social Security check and a pension check. The Social Security check is $1,800 and their pension check is $400. Together, those two income sources will exceed the $2,163 mark. That resident, being that they exceed the income limit, must take one of those two income sources, either the Social Security or the pension, and they have to make sure that that check, instead of coming directly to them, is going from the source, the pension company, or from the Social Security Administration, is being sent to this qualifying income trust instead of going directly to them. Once it goes into that trust, the income is then brought over to pay for their care in the facility, but it must be set up as this in-between location of the qualified income trust where that excess income should go. I would point out that it doesn't make a difference in the example we gave if the Social Security or the pension is the one that's put into the qualified income trust, As long as one of the incomes is put there and the other remaining income is under 2,163, that's fine. What are the general provisions for this qualified income trust? Number one, the trust must only contain income that the resident receives. No resources or other money that belongs to the resident should be going into this account. Now, in order to accommodate for bank requirements that a resident or anybody would have to fund the account with a minimal deposit in order just to open the account, the state is allowing a $20 maximum deposit from your resources or from the resident's resources in order to get the account open. So that means that whoever is opening up that trust account will need to inquire from the bank if they do have an amount that is needed in order to open the account, and if it is $20 or less. And if that's the case, this would be a good bank to work with in order to fund the account initially, open up the qualified income trust, and from that point on, the income of the resident would be going into that trust and then going out to the facility. Number two, this trust must be irrevocable. It can't be something that can be retracted once it's set up. It has to be irrevocable. And number three, the state of New Jersey has to be the beneficiary after the resident passes, that any remaining funds, were there to be any in that account, would be going back to the state. When we talk about opening up a qualified income trust, the one who actually has to open this trust, who we'll refer to as the trustee, is not to be the resident who actually is getting the income, but it can be a family member, a POA, their attorney if necessary. It can really be anybody that wants to step in just to be the trustee. It's not too scary. The only thing that needs to be set up by the trustee is simply this process of the funds moving from the source to the qualifying income trust, which can be set up with a direct deposit form that should be signed. And secondly, that from the qualified income trust to the facility, that the money is directly debited every month to make sure that the flow of income is going to the right location. So we'll discuss a little bit further in regards to the trustee, but basically that's the whole thing in regard to the obligations of the trustee. And as long as that flow of the income is set up properly, there shouldn't be any problem. When setting up a qualified income trust, it's important to keep in mind what Medicaid is looking for. Medicaid would like that whatever the desired eligibility date that you're looking for this resident to be approved for Medicaid, let's use an example of December 1st. By the end of December, by December 31st, this trust must be set up and the resident's income that will be coming there going forward needs to be going through that account. Any month that goes by from the required or requested eligibility date until that trust is set up will affect the resident's eligibility from beginning on the date that you want. So it's important to keep in mind that whatever date we're going for, within that month, the income is set up with this qualified income trust. Now, just to point out, this is contrary to a spend down. A spend down must be done prior to the month that you're looking for eligibility. Here, where it's not a spend down, it's just a matter of setting up the trust. The requirement is that it has to be done during the month of eligibility. It can be done prior, but it is also okay if it's done during the month. What Medicaid is going to do at the end of each year is when they're looking for redetermining the resident to remain covered on Medicaid, they're going to ask for statements of every single month from that trust. And they're going to look to make sure that every single month the resident's income was going into the trust and then going out to the facility on a regular basis. Were they to find that 1 month the resident's income did not go into the trust, that would be reason for them to say that the resident is not covered by Medicaid for that month. If it comes in the next month, they will again be covered, but it's important to realize the effect of this not being set up properly can damage, and that will be that it will affect the resident from being covered by Medicaid for the month that they do not fund the trust. So we gave you some information about what the trust is and what the provisions and regulations are in regard to this trust. But it's important to keep in mind that it really is just one more step that they're adding in order for the resident's income to be managed properly. Other than that, the general Medicaid regulations will remain the same. LTC clients will be receiving, along with this video, will be receiving a couple of documents. Number one, there'll be the actual qualified income trust documentation of what needs to be signed up by the trustee in order to set this up. This is from the state. This is exactly per regulation. So you will be receiving one of these. In addition, I'm sure a lot of people have questions. Maybe I wasn't speaking clearly enough, or maybe it's just something new, and it's you know, there are always questions. There's a frequently asked questions list that was compiled that can answer most of the general questions, but of course feel free to reach out to us or your account manager to get any specific information that you would like that may have not been addressed on the frequently asked questions. In addition, we're sending along 2 more forms that we think would help everyone in processing this and making sure to be on top of the qualified income trust setup. Number 1 will be a form that shows you when a resident comes into your facility, what you need to look for right off the bat in regards to assessing what category they fall under. Do they have too much income? Do they need a trust? And then we go through the steps of what needs to be done in order to set that trust up properly. And finally, we will have this last form, which is something that will need to be filled in either upon admission or upon transition to Medicaid, and sent over to your LTC account manager, which lists the resident's income source and a few pieces of information in regard to their trust. So to summarize again, as of December 1st, 2014, the Qualified Income Trust is something that will have to become part of our language and part of our routine in regard to setting residents up for Medicaid. It's not that intense. It will be another complication, and it's something that we have to be on top of, but I think that it's something that once we get familiar with it, everyone will really be comfortable with this concept and understand the ramifications of it to make sure that every single resident is set up properly. I hope this was helpful for you, and please feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions. Thank you so much for listening.